Okay, let's talk about what this crazy Wisteria project is. I feel like we've talked to a lot of people who are like, yeah, that sounds neat. What is it again?
It's a story. It's a show. It's a podcast. It's a game.
It's three guys screwing around and having a nice time together.
Yeah, making stuff up. That's the whole idea. Wisteria is basically a process by which we encourage each other to be creative and then encourage others to be creative with us. And then we work together to sort of like make it all connect so it grows and then becomes more solid as it grows.
But the funny thing is, you're talking about a process that we all know from writing or illustrating or songwriting or any of the other different domains that we all have skills in and experience with, which is the creation process is this natural tension between, okay, throw a bunch of stuff out there and then pare back and edit and make it be something that some other person can appreciate, right? One of the things that's really interesting about this project to me is I'm used to picking up a musical instrument and doing the thing I do to make a song. And I've written a book and a number of essays and stuff. And so I've started to apply that skill there. This is the first time that I've done something this openly creative with other people. And so for the first time, I have to think explicitly about what parts are creative, what parts are editing, what thing that someone else says is a crazy idea, and which of the crazy ideas are good crazy and which, don't feel like they're going to, and whatever. And like, how much do I trust my own gut reaction in that moment? I'm used to being able to have those conversations just with myself. By externalizing those conversations, I'm learning a lot about the creative process, my creative process, other people's creative processes, other options in the creative process. So in some sense, it's helping me be more creative about creation, right?
Right.
About creativity, I guess I should say.
Right.
Yeah, and from the beginning, it's kind of been like, we have this story that we want to tell, but, it could be told in a number of different media. And we sort of, started to hone in on what we thought would be the best one. But then we pretty quickly decided that it was going to be a lot more fun if we just sort of said, let's tell it in every way that we can, that seems fun, that somebody else wants to be involved in. So that we can be collaborative with it, and we can also be exploring all these different modes of storytelling.
Yeah, it's funny that way, because being media agnostic makes it feel like it makes it more dangerous, right? It makes it feel like we don't know what we're doing, in the sense that we're so accustomed to everything needing to be productized, right? And what we're saying instead is, like, this isn't about a product, this is about a creative process and about creativity. And yet we're all experienced enough and focused enough to want to have products in the end. We're just willing to allow it to grow, sort of its own accord in whatever directions, a lot farther than I think most teams would let it grow before we start paring it back. And that's how we've gotten sort of some products, if you will, that we never expected we were going to get. The podcast comes to mind, right? We have an in-fiction podcast, right, where we interview characters, and we don't wink outside the fourth wall. We just present it as though it's fact and let the listener figure out kind of, that it's fiction. And that was just like a random idea that came up in one of our meetings, and instead of saying, "Oh yeah, that might be cool,"
it blew up. Yeah.
But the thing is, instead of just saying it might be cool, we said, "Great, let's do one of those right now." And we did it, and as you say, right, it blew up. We started to attract some other talent that was really interesting.
Well, and because like it is super. When we try to just explain it right off the bat to anybody, it's saying like, "Oh, it's a podcast and it's blah and it's blah." Like, if people are like, what is this thing? Like,
it's not about it's a podcast or a show.
None of these elements are what Wisteria is. They're all they're all what is created by the Wisteria mindset. The most important creative tool that I know about in terms of making anything collectively is yes and, right?
Yeah,
and
improv
from improv,
right.
And so that there is no wrong answer to any question about Wisteria,
because the three of us already share a pretty strong view of some of the boundaries of what this thing is.
Right.
So, our yes and doesn't go in random directions. We tend to shape them in a way
it's focused. Like, Wisteria provides a focus for it. So the more that we create together and the more we create with other people, the more of a sense of Wisteria everyone involved gets. And so everything flows even better and faster. So questions come up, like when we've been prepping for the podcast or whatever, you're like, does it work this way or does it work this way? And most of the time we have no answer yet, but the fact that there was a question makes us think harder about what it is. And out of those answers come more stories.
People who create routinely, particularly people who do it sort of alone, right, understand that having constraints can be very, very helpful for creation, right? You need to have the right amount of constraint. If it's too constrained, it doesn't feel creative. If it's not constrained enough, it feels like I could do anything, and you tend
the
to
tyranny of choice. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this project is it gives what feels for me to be the right amount of structure for creativity. And I feel like we've seen some good evidence that it's not just the right amount for us. I'm thinking specifically of one of our contributors who came in, who was interviewed in character on the podcast as a game designer, but who is in real life a game designer, and who had sort of a game in the back of his mind that he was working through that he brought into the fiction and pretended was more realized than it was. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that pretend and the conversation,
he's become more realized.
Right? And now we've seen pictures of the game, and we've read the rules, and we've played this game, and it's like, this is actually a fun game.
And that's an example. That is one example of a kind of collaboration that's come out of this, and so many other kinds of collaboration have come out of it, which is one of the things that's exciting to me. And specifically, we haven't mentioned Wisteria Tales yet, which is basically like almost like a play-by-mail over social media kind of game that involves basically creating a writing prompt for the next installment of this sort of serialized story. And that's been a really exciting way to collaborate.
Yeah, because like these are like, for us, they're just like, like the interaction with people that enjoy the stuff, like it leads us down pathways that, that haven't been questions that haven't been asked yet, and that illuminates whole new aspects of the world for us. Just by asking us the question, like we have to create the answer. But like, I think that this is all this, both through Wisteria Tales and by working with each other and people, that come in to work with us. Like, for me as a creator, like I've been a creator my whole life, and I've never been able to completely clean my mind out of like writer's block or whatever it is. Like it always comes up for everybody, and there's no surefire like, oh, and then I learned to do it and it's never a problem again.
Yeah, it's like, and then I attained enlightenment. It's like, no, but I'm going to keep meditating. Yeah, totally.
But by one of the great things about this particular setup is that we are all there for each other to sort of like snap us into gear, and it automatically gives me energy to dive back in.
That's one of the two things that I've found personally. One of them is just that sense of like, oh yeah, it's not I'm climbing up a mountain trying to make this thing. It's more like I'm speeding down a river, and like I can paddle, but like even if I don't paddle, like there's all this great activity. Right. It makes it much easier, right? The bar is lower to just get out there and do some stuff. This is a space for creativity that we invite other people to join us in, so that we can feed off each other's creative impulses and help lower each other's resistances and inhibitions to creating good stuff.
Yes. Like this is a homebrewed role-playing game that we started this as.
The game that we were playing, right, just to sort of bring it into the larger picture, is it's called what's called a role-playing game, right? Dungeons and Dragons was the original one, but basically it's improvisational shared storytelling. In Wisteria, the project is a much more pure form of what that game is trying to be. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Insofar as it's a game, we're putting all these rule sets onto this creative storytelling process. I see that as, okay, that's a lot more constraint that helps beginners write stories together, because more constraints are helpful in the beginning. What we've done is we've loosened those constraints and said, we haven't said it's no longer a game. We've said we're opening the game up to other contributors, to other listeners, to other participants, and we're allowing them to participate without first explaining to them what the rules are. Right. Because we understand it well enough, at least in the context of this particular fiction, that we can welcome new inputs and have it be a positive contribution right out the gate.
Fandoms want to be creative. They're creative all the time. Like it comes up, like that's why you have, cosplay. That's why you have like, fan fiction. That's why you have all this stuff. And so there's all this natural energy that people have. They want to be creative with the thing that they love. We want to feel what you want from it, and then have that inspire us.
Like one of the questions in video games is, how do you tell a story in an interactive medium where players have all this choice? And so, and then to connect that to pen and paper role-playing games, like always the question is that the sort of game master describes something happening, and the question is, what do you do? And that is very similar to the process of how this whole thing came about, where it's like, basically we have this game where we're playing that is basically a series of what do you do questions. And then we ask the question, well, what if this could be a story that we could turn into something else? And then we asked the question of, well, what medium should it be? And each time we ask one of those questions, we sort of take the most open answer, and it's like, oh, well, hey, it could be all of these things. And when we bring another collaborator on, it's like, well, what do you do? Like, what do you want to do? How do you want to be? How do you want to interact with this story? And where do you think the story should go? And if they ask us a question, we often turn it right back around to them. Like,
right.
They're like, oh, is it okay if it's this? And we're like, that's now part of the world, you know?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Assume that is true, then what happens?
Right. Exactly. And I think that like it brings up that one of the core and most interesting things, not just among the three of us, but like when we bring in other collaborators, is that we like by working with other people and bringing other people on board, you're bringing perspectives, and you're bringing history and culture and ideas that that none of us would have ever thought of, you know. And it expands the way, like it's a sense of discovery for me to see the story expand into realms and ideas that I had no experience with previously, you know, that brings everything to the table and expands the world in a totally, for me, unpredictable and very curious way. You know, like you're not having a single person saying, this is all coming out of this brain, and you have to take what I throw out at you. Like, rather, it's entirely like I am also watching the movie that is being created, and it's extremely exciting in that way. And there's already been stuff that like because, you know, like people that have come on the show, I have not lived their life, so they're bringing their life to it, and now their point of view is something that we can all access and be inspired by, and it's really, really wild.